Can I retire at 55 with $400,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to talk about on the Your Financial EKG live stream. We're talking about, can I retire at 55 with $400,000 saved for retirement? Now, I have a unique situation. I have Candace. Candace is recently divorced, and so she is 55 years old. She has been a homemaker her entire life. She raised the kids, took care of the house, did all the scheduling, and her husband has divorced her. And so now she has $400,000. She's 55 years old, and she's saying, can I stay retired? Can I continue to do what I've been doing, or am I going to have to go back to work? Now, she's also concerned about taxes. She understands that the tax code is going to have to change. And so one of her big concerns as she gets older, as she uses her retirement assets for income, is that she's going to have to pay taxes. And so she wants to know a few different questions. She wants to know, can I retire? How long is my money going to last? What adjustments do I need to make to get this money into my 90s if it's going to end earlier than that? What about taxes and anything else that I am missing, like long-term care and things like that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into it right now. Good morning, John. Good morning, Fast Eddie. Thank you so much for joining. Listen, if you've got a question or a comment, put it in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, put it in the comments. Would love to help. All right, so here's what we've got. We've got Candace, and Candace's birthday was March 1st, 1968. She's 55 years old, and she is retired. Now, Candace has been a homemaker, so there's never been a job. She's always been at home. Social Security for Candace is going to be a spousal benefit. She's going to take that at 67, and it's only going to be $1,800 a month. Now, let me explain to you why it's only going to be $1,800 a month and why we're taking a spousal benefit. So spousal Social Security occurs if your Social Security is less than half of your spouse's. Now, in her case, she's divorced. So she's going to go through divorced Social Security benefits for a spouse. And how the IRS labels that is this. If you are divorced, your ex-spouse can receive benefits based on your record, even if you've remarried. So if Candace's ex-spouse remarries, she can still receive Social Security benefits based on his record. Now, the marriage must have lasted 10 years or longer. The ex-spouse must be unmarried. So Candace must be unmarried. Now, her husband, he can be married, but if you are receiving divorced spousal Social Security benefits, you must be unmarried. Your ex-spouse is 62 years or older. It doesn't matter if they're claiming Social Security yet. They just need to be 62 years or older. And the benefit that your ex-spouse is entitled to receive based on their work record is less than the benefit they would receive based on your work record, meaning your Social Security benefit would be less than half of their Social Security benefit. All right. I know that sounds like Beautiful Mind, the movie on the board, but that's how divorced spousal benefits work. So for her, we're going to be taking a divorced spousal benefit at 67 of $1,800. Now, this situation can still apply to you, even though she's divorced. We're 55. We got $400,000. Maybe you're not divorced. Maybe you're single. You've got $400,000 and you're wondering, can I retire? When can I retire? A lot of this facts from this case can come over to you. So we're $1,800 in Social Security benefits. She's from North Carolina, which means I always have to ask my North Carolina people one simple question before we move forward, and that is this. Now, I am from Kentucky, so I preface it with this. Are you a North Carolina fan, a UNC Tar Heel fan, or are you a Duke Blue Devil fan? Because as a Kentucky fan, I still hate Christian Laettner. I still remember 1992 when Christian Laettner hit the shot to beat Kentucky in the Final Four to go to the finals. And so I remember where I was at. So if you're from North Carolina and you're a Duke fan, we're going to get along, but we're going to have some conversations. So Candace, spousal benefit in North Carolina. So let's look at assets. She's really got, it's pretty simple. We've got two specific assets. Candace has an annuity for $200,000. Now, I was not the advisor in this case, so she inherited this $400,000, and an advisor put her into an annuity, and she has a Fidelity IRA with $200,000 as well. Now, you really want to be careful if you have limited amount of retirement assets and you're younger, and an advisor is wanting to put you in an asset like an annuity. I have nothing against annuities. We use them in our practice. We use them for guaranteed income. We use them for protection when they make sense. But for someone who is recently divorced, for someone who is not sure if their assets are going to last forever, to take half of those assets and to stick them in annuity right up front might not have been the best option. So we've got to work with where we're at. So we've got 200,000 in annuity and 200,000 in Fidelity. And the reason I preface that and I say that is because Candace doesn't really have any savings. She doesn't have any money that's in a bank. The money that comes in basically flows out for expenses. So it's like money comes in, she gets alimony, and I'm going to show you that. Alimony comes in and then it goes out. So when you're working with a financial advisor, and you've really just got to be careful. Again, I'm a financial advisor. We're fiduciaries. So I'm not talking bad about anybody. It's just me and you having coffee. All right. We're just having some coffee with Baby Yoda and having a conversation. But you really want to be careful on, okay, are these investments in my best interest, or are these investments in your best interest? Why such a large chunk of money? Why does this need to go into an annuity when I don't have any other retirement income coming in, and I don't know if this is going to last for the rest of my life? Fast Eddie says, Duke. Fast Eddie, aren't you a Yankee fan? Like, you can't be a Yankee fan and a Duke fan. You're probably like a Lakers fan, and then, well, like a Patriots fan. Like, you just take all the best teams in the country and you're like, that's my team. Come on, Fast Eddie. Candace has a home. It's worth $300,000. Now, her home is new to her. So when she got divorced, she had to buy a home. So she was able to put 20% down. So most of this home is mortgaged. So a big part of her expenses that we're going to see is the mortgage. And so again, that's why I kind of come back to this and I say, wait a sec, from an expense standpoint, why do we want to lock up half of our retirement investments so that, because we have such high, because we're losing liquidity. And so we've just really got to be careful when we're doing these kind of things. All right. Now, rate of return wise, we're going to be pretty simple on this. The annuity, we're going to give a 4% rate of return. Could be less than that. Could be more than that. Probably not going to be more than 4%. The Fidelity account, we're going to say 6% because it's still invested in the market. The reason I'm going to use 6%, the stock market's averaged 10% over the last 15 years. We're going to say 6%. So we're going to be real conservative on our projections. If we get more than that, that's great. For the house, we're going to do a 1% increase in cash flows and RMDs. We're going to stay at 6% if they're reinvested. In her case, these cash flows and RMDs probably aren't going to be reinvested. So we're not really worried about that 6% there. And what's going on? All right. Hold on one second. There we go. We're back. Okay, software. Technical glitches live, right? Like DeSantis, our governor last night on Twitter, they couldn't get that to work. All right, here we go. Okay, so let's look at expenses now. So her expenses are $3,536 per month. Now, the average inflation rate on her expenses are 1.88%. And let me show you why they're 1.88%. So we throw when we're doing a financial EKG, when we're doing a customized retirement plan for a client, I send them this expense plan, okay? And I ask them to fill this in. Now, Candace is in the early stages of creating the EKG, and so I'm able to just kind of go off of this for now. But for her baseline expenses, like what she needs for food, gas, electricity, things like that, is $2,036. We're going to put inflation on that, 3.27%, and that's never going to end. So this is going to increase by 3.27% every year really every month. We take it and we do it a monthly inflation rate. And I'll show you that when we get to that section. And that's going to go forever. Now, her expenses are very, very low outside of the mortgage. The mortgage is $1,500, which makes up almost half of her monthly expenses. So when I'm looking at this now, let me don't get ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I get excited. So her mortgage is $1,500. There's no inflation on that. It's a fixed rate mortgage. So you can see it's going to end in 2053. There's no inflation. That's why her average inflation rate is 1.88%. If we put inflation on this mortgage, like if we had just put all of her expenses and we lumped them into one, when we got to 30 years from now, her expenses would be dramatically higher because we didn't break down the expenses and look at the individual inflation rates. And that's why it's so important when you're building out a retirement plan, you want to look at the individual inflation rates on your expenses to make sure that you're not over analyzing or you're giving an inflation rate to something that's not going to be there. Also, a lot of times for clients, and we're not there with Candace yet, but we'll put a label in here that'll be something like fun. And I'll say, okay, what's your fun budget that you want for the rest of your life? And we'll put in a number, whatever that might be. Let's say it's $500, $1,000. And I'll say, okay, we're going to do this at 55. How long do we want to do this? And I'll say, well, let's end this at, let's say 80 or 85 or 75, whatever age you want to end it. So when you're building out your expenses, it's not so much, I get a lot of people that'll call me and I'll say, hey guys, how much retirement income do you want? And they'll say, we want $100,000 in retirement income, or we want $60,000 in retirement income. We want $40,000, whatever the number might be. And I'll say, why? Like, why do you want that? And they'll say, well, we want to travel. We've got our expenses in there and we've got our mortgage in there. I'll say, okay, let's just use 100,000 as an easy round number for my mind since we're on live stream. So if you want $100,000 in retirement income, how much is your mortgage? And they'll say, okay, that's $2,000 a month. And I'll say, okay, that's $24,000. So let's take 100, subtract out 24. Now we've got 76,000 in retirement income. Okay, now how much of that 76 is fun money? And they'll say, okay, we want to spend, I'll just throw out a number, $24,000 a year for a vacation or travel or just seeing our grandkids or whatever. So I'll say 76 minus 24, that's 52. So your baseline expenses are $52,000. That's what we want to put inflation on. And that's what we want to have continuing on for the next 15, 20, 30, 40 years. The fun money, eventually that's going to end. Like you're not going to want to be traveling like you are at 55, maybe at 80. So we need to have an end date on that. And we need to calculate that into our projections. And then the mortgage, what's the end date? When's the amortization schedule end? And let's put a 0 on the inflation on that, because it's not when you're dealing with expenses, it's not just a whole, like, this is what I want. Can that be done? It's okay. We've got to break that down, because if we're building out a customized financial EKG, I don't want to get to 80 and be wrong. And so we really want to be as exact as possible down to the penny. So that's what we're doing over here. Fast Eddie says Celtics, Bruins, Yankees, Cowboys, all. How can you be a Celtics and a Bruins fan and a Yankee? Shouldn't it be Red Sox? Come on. John Gill says, at what stock bond split is Fidelity? To be honest, John, we're not into that yet on the investment side of things. So all we're doing right now with Candace is building out the retirement plan. So the projections will change once we get a good idea of the investment allocations and what that's going to be. But that's a great question, John. So expenses, here we go. 2036 is baseline. Mortgage is $1,500. Now remember, Candace is concerned about taxes, and she's concerned about making sure her retirement income lasts forever. So we're going to go to cash flows. Now Candace is getting alimony. That's $3,500 a month, and that's going to go until she is, or 2035. So that's going to go for another 12 years. That's going to get her to 67. At 67, the alimony goes away and she goes on the spousal Social Security. So for her, even though she's getting alimony, there might be some issues here. Okay. So we've got to look at that. And so for how you can take this and put it into your own plan is, okay, I've got $400,000 in retirement savings at 55. If I make, let's see, 3,500 times 12 is what? $42,000 a year. Just act like she's making $42,000 a year until 67. She has a job. That's how you can take it and put it into your own plan. Hopefully, the average person in America is making, I think 56,000 is the average retirement income in America. Or I'm sorry, not the average retirement income. The average working income is about $56,000 right now. Actually, I think I saw somewhere around 70,000 now for 2023, which is fantastic. Obviously, inflation's built into that and all kinds of things. But for this scenario, you can say, okay, Candace has $400,000. She's going to get alimony. That's me working. Assuming I work to 67, what's that going to look like? Am I going to run out of money? You can kind of say apples to apples for you. Okay. So we're getting alimony of $3,500 until age 67. And the reason I wanted to use Candace as well is I don't think I've done a divorced alimony case on here. And so I just wanted to make sure if that's you, if you're someone who has been divorced, maybe getting alimony, don't understand Social Security benefits for that, I wanted you to be able to have a scenario that you could use for yourself. Okay. Now, taxes for Candace are where she has some concerns. So let's go to 2024. Let's go to a full year and let's spend some time in taxes. Okay. So for the year 2024, her projected federal tax rate is 8.2%. Okay, now she lives in North Carolina and there's a state tax on it, but her federal tax rate is 8.2%. So you can see that there's no wages, no qualified contributions, like she's not putting money into a 401k, an IRA, anything like that. We're not on Social Security yet, no pensions, no 1099 interest. So she's got about $42,000 or $49,000 in withdrawals for her monthly income. Okay, $7,000, which is taxable, and then monthly cash flows. We take out the $13,850. That's the single deduction. $35,674 is her taxable income. Here's our base tax, over base tax. Federal tax is $4,061. Take that number, divide it into 49, we get the 8.20%. So what is this telling us? That her taxes are pretty low, that there's not necessarily a tax situation in her immediate future. But Candace is pretty knowledgeable of the political markets and what's going on. And she said to me, hey, Drew, I realize that taxes are going to go up in 2026. So what is that going to do to my overall plan? So I go, okay, Candace, let's increase taxes in the year 2026 by 25%. And you might think, Drew, 25%, that's ridiculous. Well, actually, that's about where the Obama era taxes are. If we were to revert back to the Obama era tax code, it's about 25% higher. So you can see the brackets have adjusted accordingly. So now we can go to 2027. Let's go to another full year. And we can see she jumped up about 2%, 10.74. So her federal tax is $5,935 versus in 2024, $4,061. It's almost a $2,000 jump in her taxes because we have an increase in taxes in the year 2026. And that's just because the Trump era tax code is going to go away and the current tax code will be reverted back to the Obama era tax code unless it is updated, extended, revised. And a lot of that will depend on obviously who wins the White House next year and what happens with the House and the Senate. And so we just want to prepare. We've got $31 trillion in debt. I was watching Speaker McCarthy yesterday when he came out of debt negotiations on CNBC, and they were talking about our debt to GDP ratio. We're at 124% debt to GDP, meaning we've got more debt than we have GDP as a country. And so taxes are going to have to go up no matter who's in office. It doesn't matter if it was Reagan or Clinton or whoever. I don't know. I don't try to make this political because I don't want to be political. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter who's in office. Taxes are going to have to go up for Social Security, for Medicare, for everything, defense spending, everything. And so this is something that we've really got to be concerned about, whether you have a low tax bracket like Candace or you have a higher tax bracket. A lot of times I'm able to make bigger changes earlier with clients who are in lower tax brackets than with clients who are, making a lot more money. We have to kind of do our tax efficiency, Roth conversions, things like that, a little bit spread out over time. And I've had to give some answers to people and say, listen, I don't know what taxes are going to be. We can do what we can do for the next 2 years, right? We can try to get as much money tax-free for the next 2 years, but we're going to have to really readjust this come January 1st, 2026, because that's when we're going to know what the taxes are going to be. And so as a financial advisor, when I'm talking to my clients on a quarterly basis, we're saying, hey, taxes, 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 because that, if you've got a $400,000 IRA, so for her assets are they're both IRAs, it's $400,000, but that's really not $400,000 for her. It's like, what is it? 10%. So let's take 10% out of that. That's 40,000. So it's really 380,000, right? Obviously she's not going to cash it in all at once. That would put her in like the 36% bracket. It'd be a lot more money, but that 400,000 is really not all hers. There's a portion that has to go to taxes. So we need to look at that. So we're going to go through a scenario here in a second, looking at doing Roth conversions. John asked this: what happens if out to the alimony if the ex passes away? Yeah, does she have life insurance? There's a life insurance that's set up for this, John. Great question. If you're going through alimony, obviously I'm not an attorney, so don't talk. I'm not the person to ask for divorce advice, but yes, there's a life insurance policy set up if something were to happen to the funds from the ex-spouse. Okay, so we got to look at taxes. We got to understand what are we going to do for taxes, because it's going to be a big expense in the future. I don't think people understand, and I try to communicate on this channel, I don't think you understand how big of a deal taxes are going to be in the future. Just because if you look at the obligations that we have as a country, if you look at Social Security needing to be adjusted so that full benefits can be paid out after the year 2033, Medicare can be paid out after 2026, you've got more boomers retiring and you don't have enough job workers to fill the boomer spots. Taxes are just going to have to go up. So it's something we really got to look at. Okay. So let's get to retirement. So here's what we're going to do for retirement. So we've got the income, which is Social Security, right? That's going to kick in at 67. We've got the assets of $400,000. We've got our expenses, about $2,000 in baseline, $1,500 in a mortgage. We've got our cash flows, that's alimony for the next 12 years. We've got taxes, all of that being included together, and we're showing on taxes an increase in taxes in the year 2026. What happens to our retirement income? Because we're not working, that's pre-retirement. What happens to our retirement income? Well, you can kind of see it up here. And you can see up here, we've got some red letters, but let's go through the chart real quick. So remember I talked to you about inflation. How we look at inflation is on a monthly basis. So this is January 2024. Her expenses are $3,580. See how they go up every month? That's how inflation works. If you're calculating retirement income and you're calculating inflation, you don't need to be calculating it on an annual basis. You need to look at it on a monthly basis. I use a financial calculator and we break the periods down to monthly. We don't look at it annual. Because if you look at it on an annual basis, you're not going to get a true figure. You want to break it down monthly. I say this example all the time. I go to Costco. I got 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a wife. I have to feed a mini army. I've got a boy. The youngest is a boy, and that kid can eat. Oh my gosh. He eats all the time. And I'm not talking like snacks. I'm talking like eats. And then my oldest daughter, she can eat. My middle child, she doesn't care if she eats at all. But the two, like the sandwiches on top of the bread, man, they can eat. So when I go to Costco to buy food, and they love fruit, the kids love fruit, which actually that's probably a blessing, right? Because when I was growing up, man, I didn't like broccoli. I didn't like asparagus. I didn't like cauliflower. I didn't like a lot of it. My mom, God bless my mom and the fruit and vegetables, because she probably had, I don't remember eating a lot of them because I didn't like a lot of them. My kids love fruit, which is great. So anyway, listen, if you don't like vegetables, leave that in the chat in the comments. Help me out here. But raspberries, they were $3 for 12 ounces, Costco. Now they're like $6. I think they actually came down in the 5s the last time we were there, but $6. Have you bought meat at Costco lately, or Sam's Club, Walmart, Aldi, anywhere? That's inflation. And they didn't say, oh, it's January 1st. We're going to wait till next January to raise prices. No. They're like, listen, it costs a lot more to get these cows processed. We got to raise prices. or, corn. We don't have enough corn out in the fields because of drought, or, because I think there was some drought and then there were some water issues last year. So inflation is something that we really want to calculate on a monthly basis. And that's what I love about the EKG software is we're able to look at this on a monthly basis. So she's got $400,000 in spendable assets. We got $300,000 in our house, which is not really $300,000 because equity, right? There's some equity in there that she doesn't have a lot of equity. She just bought this house. It's got a 30-year mortgage. It's 2053. So here's our alimony until Social Security kicks in at 67. There's the $1,800. There's our net monthly income after taxes. There's our net monthly expenses. See how much they've grown? 37.80. Well, let's go up to here. 35.75, 45.52. What's the difference? That's $1,000, right? 45.52. Let's get an exact number. 4552. Let's subtract that from 35.75. That's $977 difference. That's monthly. Times that by 12. That's $11,724. That's gone up. And that's including a fixed rate mortgage. So the fixed rate mortgage hasn't moved, just the variable expenses. So now we have a net cash flow of negative $2,757, meaning this is what has to come out of the portfolio on a monthly basis. So you can see this here. Here's what's coming out. We've got a little bit of positive cash flow. Boom. Social Security, get a little bit of overlap there. And then that money's got to come out. And so if you see this, basically, we're out of money at 83. We still have Social Security. There's our net monthly income. There's our net monthly expenses. There's what has to come out, and we're at zero. Now, our house is worth $400,000, but remember, 2053 is when it's paid off. So we've got a lot of equity in here. So we could do a reverse mortgage. We could sell the house, do something like that. But this is not necessarily a situation I want to get into. So she's 55. She's got $400,000, and she's asking, can I stay retired? And she's concerned about taxes and staying retired. And so we need to look at a situation where maybe she has to go back to work, or maybe she has to start working. She's never really worked. I mean, obviously she's worked. She raised the kids, so don't get me wrong on that. That's my job. My wife raises 3 kids. We homeschool our children. We're those granola people that do that. And that's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. I try to teach my daughter how to read sometimes, and I'm like, it's an S. It's the S sound. S. I would not be a very good teacher. I'm good at reading. I can read history to her, but I'm not very good at teaching her reading. So anyway, so we got to look at this and say, what can we do? So we go back and we just go to income. And the easiest thing to do is to say, okay, what if you worked or found a part-time job until age 60? Okay, so let's say March of 60. And let's say you only made, what if you made $1,000 a month? That's $12,000 a year. Okay, part-time work, $12,000 a year till 60. No projected salary increases. Now, you probably will get one, but let's say we don't. All else being equal, you've got $400,000. Now, here's the thing too, guys. Remember the drag. We're out of money. Well, now we're out of money at 87, but we're out of money at 83. Our rate of return, remember our rate of return is 4% on the annuity, 6% on the money that's in the market with Fidelity. She's recently divorced. Her advisor, and again, I'm not on advisors. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But he took half of her, what she got from what they got and what she got in the divorce, what they split. He took half of that and put it into an annuity. And so annuities aren't going to earn 8, 9, 10%. They're going to earn somewhere between 4 to 6. And more than likely than not, it's going to be closer to that 4% range. And so when she's trying to project out retirement income, we have to have a rate of return on our investments of 6.47% to make this last until she's 100. Now, obviously, I know she's not going to live till she's 100, but, well, I hope she does. But this is higher than what we're projecting, right? We're projecting about 5 because of how the investments have been allocated. And so we can make the money last a little bit longer if the investments had been allocated differently, if there would have been a financial EKG set up. if there had been a plan put in place to say, hey, you're going to run out of money at this time if we don't earn this amount of interest. And I call that the guardrail rule. So when I do a financial EKG for someone, and listen, if you want a financial EKG, go to the description below. But when I do a financial EKG for someone, we look and I say, okay, this is the rate of return that we need to make your money last to your mid 90s, to your 100, whatever you want. This is the rate of return we need to make your money last. Now we look at the investments and we say, this is how we have to have the investments situated so that you can earn that rate of return. Now, if the rate of return that you need to make your money last forever is 8, 9, 10%, that's a different conversation. We're going to be talking about maybe you don't need to have as much coming out of your accounts. Maybe you need to work a little longer. Maybe you need to adjust your budget. But if the rate of return, so for Candace, the rate of return that she needs is 6.47%. The market's averaged 10 the last 15 years. Now, obviously, we're not going to put her all in the market. That doesn't make sense. But 6.47%, we go back to assets and we say, you know, maybe it's not a good idea to put half of your assets into a more low risk conservative investment that's not going to earn close to the rate of return you need to make your money last forever. Again, I'm not against annuities. We use them in our practice, but it's like a tool. It's like going to CarMax, right? Like I'm CarMax, independent fiduciary. So like when you come to me, right, and you go, hey, this is what we've got, I'm saying this is what we need to use, not like if I go to CarMax, I got 3 kids and 2 dogs. If they try to put me into a Corvette, I'm gonna be like, guys, you ain't looking at everything I got. I need a minivan. I need a minivan. And so it's the same for Candace. What do we need to earn in order for this money to last forever or as long as her life? Because I don't want to get you to late 80s and 90s and you be out of money. That's like the most vulnerable time of your life. And so it's really important to make sure you have your allocations correct based on the EKG. Ray says this, taxes are huge. Make moves you can into your Roth accounts as much as possible. Tax minimization is essential. It's essential, Ray. Yes. Essential. Sorry, I get a little hyped up about all this investment stuff because it just frustrates me. Not people that are, it frustrates me that people get into these situations. So we're showing $1,000 coming out for work, coming in for work. It's $12,000 a year. So what that's going to do that's going to get her to 87. Remember, we're still showing a tax increase in the year 2026. Taxes are going to increase. That's coming. So we've got to be aware of that. So when we're doing projections for retirement income, you best believe we got to put increases in taxes in, right? It's going to increase in 2026 at a minimum of 25%. That's the Obama era tax code. So we've got to be there. So I go back and I say, okay, 87, what if we're able to earn another $1,200? That's $14,000 a year. Where does that get you? Still at 87. Okay, so 1,200's at 87. What about 1,800? Where does that put us? Calculating, still at 87. See, this low rate of return, that's what's really hurting us right now. How our assets have been allocated before we had a plan. Before we had a retirement plan, our assets were allocated. And that's what's really hurting us right now. Go to 2000. Retirement. We don't move. So we've really, really, really got to think about maybe working a little bit longer. So what if we do this? Instead of working, I don't want to start making her work full time. She's been a homemaker. She was not doing, she was basically taking care of the house when her husband divorced her. So I don't want to be like, hey, you got to go work full time. So what if we said, okay, let's keep it at 1,000. Let's step into this part-time work. Let's not just jump into it, say you got to get 40 hours a weekend now. Let's just do it a little longer. Let's go to 62. Now we get to 89. So we're getting there. So for her, it's going to be a situation where we're saying, hey, Candace, we're going to have to make some adjustments. You're going to have to work a little bit. Taxes are going to go up. So that's something we need to look at. Okay. So let's start thinking about taxes. So let's look at Roth conversions. Now, what we're going to look at here is all else being equal for Candace. Let's start looking at doing Roth conversions. Because what I want to think about is if we do the same thing that we were going to do in the original scenario, we work a little bit, we raise taxes in the year 2026, our expenses are the same, our assets are the same, right? We can't change the annuity or the money that's in the market. If all of that stays the same, what's that going to do to our retirement picture, right? So let's go to income. Let's add in a little bit of income. Let's say $1,000. Let's do that to 62. I think we're doing it to March of 62. Okay. Assets. There's our Roth conversion account. Rate of return still the same. Let's go to taxes. Let's increase our taxes. So we're increasing them 25% in the year 2026. Go to retirement, and we're at 89. Okay. So we're at 89 years old doing the Roth conversions. So what this shows me, let's go to reports and print real quick. All right. Current scenario 5-year Roth conversion. I've tried to make them as equal as possible. Okay. So in both scenarios, we're working until age 62, making $12,000 a year. In both scenarios, taxes are going to go up in the year 2026. Okay. Both scenarios, the investments are exactly the same. The alimony is exactly the same. Everything's still the same. We're out of money at the exact same time. You might be thinking, Drew, what's that matter? What's it matter if I do Roth conversions? Well, if we go to the dashboard, it'll show us. If she lives from 55 to 89, her lifetime taxation on her current scenario is $428,160. Doing Roth conversions, she'll be at $395,697. So we've actually lowered her tax bill. What is that? 28, 29, 30, 31, 30, $33,000 by doing these Roth conversions. But we haven't upset her life, right? She's still running out of money at 89. Now at 89, we'll have the house and we can do a reverse mortgage and all that. So nothing's changing except we're lowering her taxes by like $35,000. And so that's why it's really important to look at these different scenarios, apples to apples. And I'll show you this. 89. Here we go. And there's the house. It's paid off in the year 2053. So that's all equity at this point, which we could do a reverse mortgage or sell it or whatever. So this is a pretty good scenario for her. Now, obviously, there's some things that we have to continue to look at. There's some things that we hopefully can change, like the investment side of things. Hopefully we can change, how some things are allocated to try to get a better rate of return. But for her, does it make sense? Can I retire at 55 with $400,000? Not doing what you're doing. There's going to have to be some adjustments. And I'm concerned about taxes. Does it make sense to do conversions? It does make sense to do conversions, even in a situation where you are going to run out of money in your late 80s, projected. Obviously, we hope it's a lot better than that. But the reason I'm showing that is because you might think, oh, I'm going to run out of money. I don't need to do conversions. I need to just keep working and add money to my 401k. It actually does make sense for her to do it, and it doesn't change her life. And in the sense of it doesn't make this money run out any sooner, but it actually helps her pay less taxes. And you can see that. Well, that's at the end. Sorry. There's no money left at the end. So there's no taxes to do at the end. But over time, 428 versus 395. Let's go to taxes real quick here. No, that's not working. Okay. So anyway, can I retire at 55 with $400,000? No, sort of, but you're going to have to work a little bit. Okay. Comments. Let's go over here real quick. Government's got to quit writing checks they don't have money for. Fast Eddie coming out swinging. Ray Anderson says this: if she's essentially on Social Security alone at 67, her effective tax rate will be very, very low, maybe zero of everything in the house. That's true. We may be able to get her Social Security if we're only on Social Security at that point. We're still going to have to be pulling money off of her IRAs. So you think about it, if taxes are going up, we also have required minimum distributions that we're going to have to deal with. So let's go to retirement real quick. Let's go to 73. So you can see here, we've got $507,000 in the IRA at 73. So Let's see that. Let's go to RMDs real quick. Let's just look at what that would look like right now. What did I say? 507. So let's say 73. It's 75 at the year 2033. It's like a stair step on the RMDs, but let's just use 73. That might be where you're at. You're closer to today. Just gives us a good example. Her tax bracket would be, let's say it's going to be 12% at that point. Rate of return is 5. So her first RMD, 19,132. So we go 19,132, divide that by 12. That's 1,594 a month. So now what we can do, so 1,594 a month. Go back to the scenario. Why are you not working? Retirement. Go to 73. We look at this and we say she's going to take 48,350. So a portion of this is going to satisfy her RMD, which is 19,132. But keep in mind, all of this is going to be taxable. 50% of her Social Security benefits are going to be taxable. That's the provisional income, 61,000. So she's still going to be paying some taxes on all this. So again, that's why we're trying to look at, we're just trying to look at what we can do with where we're at today. There's sometimes we can, I live an hour and a half from Disney World. I could sprinkle pixie dust on it, but it doesn't really work in real life, right? Peter Pan doesn't really exist. Don't tell my kids that, but we can do what we can do, which is what we're trying to do. So Fast Eddie says this: would you be better off to get out of the annuity and take the hit now? No. Because the annuity that she's in has a surrender charge schedule. She is under the age of, she's 55, which means she's young. She's in the state of North Carolina, so her surrender charge schedule is pretty high. It's a newer annuity. I'm gonna just say it's 10% is her surrender charge. So on $200,000, that's $20,000 hit to get out of it. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all at this point. It could be something we do over time. It's just something that I just get frustrated with. Because a lot of times when we build out financial EKGs, I get frustrated because people, like advisors, allocate investments without understanding when we're going to claim Social Security. They don't think about what's the what bucket is the retirement income going to come from? Because we would look at withdrawal orders. Because if there's multiple different assets there, we want to look at multiple different withdrawal orders. So I've had other videos where we have a longer list of assets and we're looking at different withdrawal orders. If this person had a 401k, we might be using the rule of 55. If this person had a large chunk of non-qualified money, we may be using that, the Freedom Fund first. So it really just depends on where we're at. So people make these investment decisions, these allocations without understanding like, okay, what's our expenses? How is that going to affect us with inflation? What about cash flow? They just say, hey, this is something that you need and this is what we'll do over here and boom, you're done without having a plan. John says, is the annuity an inheritance of an IRA or is it taxable money? So that's an IRA. The annuity was purchased after she was divorced. So it wasn't something she inherited. It was something that she got after the divorce. And so that's where we run into issues. And that's why I get frustrated because it's just something like, let's go back to assets real quick. Let me do this real quick. Let me go to scenarios. Let's go to current scenario. Let me take it off here real quick. Let me create I'm going to create a real quick scenario of her, Drew's scenario. Okay. Let me show you this. Okay. So this is Drew's scenario. Okay. So if we're looking at this, let's take out the annuity. Let's just say this is at Fidelity still. And it's traditional IRA. And let's just say it's managed at risk. $200,000. So now we're able to come down here and let's just say we're going to earn 6%, right? Because now it's all in the market. Instead of it being in the annuity, we're going to put all of it in the market. Again, I'm not saying that the market's the safest place to be, but it's sometimes you have to earn a certain amount of interest and the best place to be is the market. That doesn't mean you have to be like investing in NVIDIA stock or Tesla stock, but you can have a nice diversified portfolio of Vanguard or iShare or BlackRock or an indexed ETF, just a nice allocation, low expense ratio that's going to give you the growth that you want. I always say investing is really simple, guys. I'm a baseball guy. We talk about this a lot on the channel, but when you're hitting a baseball, right, you're either like a home run hitter, like you may be an Aaron Judge, Or you might be like a singles double guy, like Yandy Diaz for the Tampa Bay Rays. He's an on-base singles doubles. Now, he's hit a few more home runs this year than he normally does, but he's get on base, hit singles and doubles. When we're trying to build out the EKG, we want to look at what is the rate of return that we need. For her rate of return was about 6. Well, if the market's average 10 or 8 with inflation, and all we need is 6, all we have to do is hit singles and doubles. We don't need to be swinging for the fences. Because if we're going to swing for the fences, the mighty Casey will strike out more, right, than he'll hit a home run. And so when you're my age or younger, or you're working a little bit longer, then you can swing for the fences. But in her case, we need to be more diligent about our rate of return. We can be in the market, but we don't have to take all the risk of the market. We don't have to be as aggressive as the overall market. So let's look at this now. So we took it out of the annuity just for kicks and giggles. John and Fast Eddie for you guys here. Look at that, 96. Now we've got her working. Let's take her out of working for a second. Go to retirement, 87. Remember, we were at 83 where we're at. So we got 4 extra years just the way we allocated the money. So go back here. Let's average in $1,000. Let's just work for 5 years. Where does that get us? That's a 93. That makes me feel good. Now we're at 93, right? 93 is like solid. Like that's a pretty good plan right there. And what we're able to do, remember, is we changed. So let's go to reports real quick. Let me bring up Drew's scenario. So this is the current scenario. This is working right here. This running out of money at 89. This is working 2 extra years and having the half of the money in a lower returning investment. Over here, we've allocated the money better for what her rate of return needs to be, and we're working 2 less years. So we're going to work till 60 over here. We're going to work till 62 over here. So because we understood the plan first, then we're able to assess the investments and the allocations on that to come up with a better plan. It's not that we're finagling the numbers. We're not trying to say, okay, let's just kind of finagle this to get a longer plan. No, we're saying we're backing up. And essentially, why I call what we do a financial EKG is because we look at, it's like when I get blood work. So I have genetically high cholesterol. So I go get blood work about every quarter because I want to see what my lipid panels are, right? And so, because I want a healthy heart, like I lift weights, I exercise, but I want to live a long time. I want to see those kids grow up. I want to see their kids, maybe their kids. And so when they take the blood out of my arm, it's just red. And I actually learned today, your blood's actually white, but the red blood cells make it red. I didn't listen a lot in biology. Or is that anatomy? Science was not my thing. Calculators and math, that was my thing. So when the blood comes out and they put it in that, what do they call that? A transfuser or something where it spins really fast. They give you that report and they tell you exactly what's going on inside your body. An EKG is the same way. You look at an EKG and they'll tell you exactly what's going on inside of your heart. Is there leakage? Is there a murmur? What's going on? How about, is there blockage? It's the same with your retirement plan. We want to look at everything on the surface and we want to break it down individually to say, how long is this money going to last? Because if we're just looking at it on the surface, like if you look at me on the surface, you don't have any clue what's going on inside of me. So that's the same with retirement. We can't just say, oh, I've got this amount of assets. Is my money going to last forever? I don't know. I get people that call me all the time or they'll send me an email. Hey, Drew, I'm 62. I got $100 million. Is that going to be okay? I don't know. Drew, I'm 55. I got $800,000. Is that going to last for? I don't know. We got to do the plan. We got to go through the plan because we got to go through the expenses. We got to go through the taxes. We got to go through what you want to do. What are your dreams and goals in retirement? Do you want to travel? Do you want to leave a legacy? What about your kids? Are you going to move? Are you going to stay in California? I got a lot of people that call me from California. You going to leave California? You're going to stay in California. Are you going to leave New York? You're going to stay in New York. You're going to stay in Florida? You're going to leave Florida. What are you going to do? And then we look at it and we say, okay, how are we invested? And the way we're invested today, is that the way we want to be invested in retirement? Because a lot of times you'll be coming off of your 401k or you'll be investing in your IRA. And when you get to retirement, you can't invest the same way, right? When you're landing a plane in Tampa, I just flew to Michigan recently. We came back to Tampa. When you land in Tampa, it is a beautiful landing. You come over the Gulf. If you come in from the Alabama side, you come over the Gulf. You got all the big old houses on the beach, Tom Brady's house on the beach down there in Clearwater area. And then you land, and it's beautiful. But in the summertime, which what we have right now, you have these storms that pop up like 3, 4, 5 o'clock every day. We get a storm off the Gulf, and that can cause some, I don't want to say volatility, but that can cause some issues as you land the plane. And that's the same with retirement. How we're investing today, and then how are we going to invest in the interim before we retire, like the short term. I kind of look at it like this. You've got 3 distinct stages. And within those stages, obviously, there's a lot of other things going on. But you've got your like accumulation. You've got your preservation. And I'm spelling all these wrong. And then you've got deaccumulation. Okay? So you've got kind of these 3 stages. And I spelled preservation wrong, so I hope my spelling teacher isn't watching me. You have accumulation, which is what I'm at now. And this, I can't tell you, this is not like a certain number, like, oh, it's 20 to 50. It's 20 to whenever you start to see your runway. Like when you start to see your runway, if you're going to retire at 55, your growth and preservation mode is going to be different than someone who's going to retire at 65 or 62. So you're going to accumulate as much as you can. But once you start to turn and you start to see the landing strip, you've got to start preserving your money. You still want to grow it, but you got to preserve it, because eventually deaccumulation is coming. That's when you got to put that landing gear down and you got to start paying out your assets. And so you don't want to be investing in the deaccumulation stage like you are in the accumulation stage. I get a lot of people that'll call me and they go, hey, Drew, man, I'm in NVIDIA stock and I'm in this, that, and the other, and it's doing really well. And I'll say, well, that's great. And they're like, well, I'm retired. I'm like, you need to make some adjustments. And they go, no, I'm tech heavy. I'm risk savvy. And I'm like, listen, in the year 2000, I was a freshman in high school, but I know history, and history doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme. In 2008, that's the first year I got into this business. It was a bloodbath. And you want to make sure if you are in deaccumulation, you don't want to have sequence of return risk where you're losing money right up front. And I can show you that in just a second if we have time, what sequence of return risk is. Let's see. John says this. How would she feel about basically working just to pay Roth conversion taxes? She works part-time. Does conversion have the outcome in general? Yeah, I mean, really, John, we just got to get some money into the plan. That's the big thing. We just got to get some extra income into the plan. Whatever that looks like, we've got to get some extra income. Fast Eddie says this. Drew, do you recommend removing your yearly needed income all at once or every month, 401k or IRA? Wow, that's a really good question. So I recommend when we do income planning for clients, when we're setting up a stream of income for clients, we do monthly distributions. The reason I do monthly distributions, normally we already have an emergency fund. Okay, we've planned an emergency fund, a year to 2 years worth of liquid assets, cash equivalents, short-term bonds, something that we can get to if the market really struggles. But if it's just a normal market cycle, we're going to pay it out monthly. 401k or IRA, it depends on when we're taking the money out. If we're under the age of 59 and we're retiring at 55, between 55 and 59 and a half, a 401k is our main asset. We're going to use that for the rule of 55. If it's an IRA, we've got to use a 72T. If we're over the age of 59 and a half, everything can be used. If you have a freedom bucket of money, which I talk about, having a bucket of money that's not IRA, not 401k, not Roth IRA, not simple, not SEP, just a brokerage account that you're putting money into every month or quarterly, whatever, then you want to use that to bridge. That's great. But I usually say every month is how we pay out income. It just makes me feel better. That money stays invested. And so we're able to keep that going there. All right. So I've got about 5 more minutes. Any questions? Let me show you sequence of return risk real quick, because we were just talking about, remember, we were talking about accumulation. You can't see that. Accumulation, growth and preservation, and deaccumulation, right? So accumulation is like me, 37. I'm trying to grow my assets as much as possible. Growth and preservation is if you're under, like Candace is asking, can I retire at 55? She's in this growth preservation mode. You're kind of like you're 12, right? Like you're not 13 yet, and you're not 11, you're 12, you're a tweener. So growth preservation, then you have deaccumulation where you're using your assets for income. And the reason it's so important to adjust how you invest is because of sequence of return risk. So let me show you her scenarios real quick, and let's look at sequence of return. Let's use it, Drew's scenario. So if we go to the market here, this is sequence of return risk. So what sequence of return risk is that you have down years in the market right off the front. So as you walk into retirement, 3, 9, 9, 9. Now what we can do within the software is we can generate randomized rates of return, and we can decide if we want to do sequence of return risk up front, negatives first. Where do we want the minimum and maximum of the market to be? We can also look at historical rates. So I can say, oh, if we have a year 2000, 2008 decade, right? There's that negative 38, 2008, or here's 2000, negative 10, negative 13, negative 23. What about the 70s when we had inflation last time? I think we had 2 crashes in the 70s, right? Yeah, here, negative 7. Oh, get out of there. Negative 17, negative 29, negative 11. So we can look at all of these to give us an idea of what's the market going to do. So we kind of have 2 projection models here. We're looking at geometric returns, like what are we projecting out? How long is this money going to last? We got it till 93. And then we look at the market and we say, okay, if we have some sequence of return risk, what's it going to look like? In this case, it's 88 and 93. So you see the market on the right, what we're projecting on the left. And so you use those 2 things together to build out the plan, right? It's not like, oh, the plan sucks because this is going to kill it. No. They work together. These are randomized rates of return. We don't know what the market's going to do. If I knew what the market was going to do, I'd live on that beach house where Tom Brady lives in Clearwater. I don't. So we want to look at sequence of return risk. So this is another randomized set. And look at this. We never run out of money. That's a great scenario. Never run out of money. But we also can't rely on that because we don't know what the market's going to do. Here's an 8, 1, 9, and basically flat. We're out at 85 and 93. So it's all working together. That's why I said at the very beginning of this, or when we were talking about assets, it's so important to have the financial EKG first before you start planning your assets and your Social Security and your income. Once you have the plan built, then you can start making decisions on everything else. Because if you're building a house like with no blueprints, your house is going to fall, right? I like the story that Jesus told. The man who built his house on the rock. When the storms of life came, that house stood. I call that retire on confident knowledge. I actually have that taped to my desk. Retire on confident knowledge. We want to retire on the rock. The rock is the EKG. The rock is a customized retirement plan because we can't, like, how are we gonna know when we're gonna take Social Security? How are we gonna know about taxes if we're just like, I'm just going to do this and hope it works? Todd says this, some of my investments pay dividends. Do you recommend taking the dividends first before selling any securities, or let those drip and sell securities for income? It depends on the actual plan, Todd. It depends on where we're at in the markets. I love dividends. Dividends and interest are great. So what we try to do is just calculate those into a yearly. When are those going to pay? Some of the software that we use will show us when those are going to pay, the amounts are going to pay. And so then we're able to coordinate what that is with the monthly payout. So that's something you could do. It's a little tougher if you're kind of going through each individual stock. We use a software program that tells us what's this total portfolio going to pay in dividends and what's that approximate value going to be per month. And then we can say, okay, if it's going to pay, I don't know, I'm just going to use an example, $1,000 a month in dividends, and we need $3,000, and we know $2,000 needs to come out of the plan. So we're able to put the 2 together. Okay. Good question. Really good question, actually. Okay, guys, I'll stay on here for what do we got? Where are we at? 59 minutes and 10 seconds. I'll stay on for 50 more seconds if anybody has questions. But if not, that was my wife calling me on my phone. Hopefully she's bringing me some lunch or asking me what I want for lunch, because I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to. I don't know what I'm eating today. Normally it's a turkey sandwich, but I'm trying to stay away from the carbs. Trying to be a little bit better on the old belly, right, and the heart, because bread turns to sugar. I'm not a health expert, but doing what we can do. Cool. No other questions? Listen, guys, thank you so much for coming and watching. Really enjoyed this. We got started a little early today. Normally it's 11 o'clock every other Thursday. Hopefully you all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy it. God bless. Bye-bye.